All right, welcome. I have with me a very special guest. Her name is Carrie Bennett, and she is a clinician and educator in quantum biology. And so I'm going to have a lot to talk with her about today. Um, to start off, Carrie, a little bit about my story is the past 10 years or so, I've been experiencing quite a lot of brain fog, memory loss, and fatigue and things like that. And for me to be in my 20s and 30s the last 10 years, it was kind of shocking, like what's going on here. But it wasn't until I came across some of your videos, some of your interviews that I was like, wow, the more I learn about quantum biology, I can potentially fix these issues that have been going on. So yeah, where should we even start today? So a lot of people are, obviously on their phones and on their computers for hours upon hours a day. How does that affect their health and their quantum biology?
Oh, that is the question right there, Jack. You went there. I'm so glad you did, because, I think a lot of people don't recognize that light does anything for our body beyond like, okay, it's bright outside. I can see, right? And now it's dark and, I'm going to go to bed. And the more we learn about light, the more we realize that light is a signal that really controls our biology, our whole entire system. And so you can imagine how over the course of the past, well, probably 150 years, right, since literally artificial light's been invented, but you can also the past, let's say 3 years even, that we've been on screens more than ever, that that's how things can go awry in the body, because we're not under the light signaling of nature anymore. We're under the light signaling that's been created and used for things like technology, screens, televisions, computer monitors, light bulbs. And so then, that opens a whole discussion about, well, okay, what is wrong with that artificial light? And then what is so important, or what does the natural light do? And so that's where we can probably get started if you want to dive into it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So like a lot of my viewers are crypto traders. So people looking at their screens a lot, maybe all day long.
Sure.
What are some of the symptoms of being on your screens too much? Things that come to my mind, like things that I've dealt with are, like I said, brain fog, memory loss, fatigue. I wanted to ask you, is like adrenal fatigue, was that a symptom? And
Absolutely.
like my wife also deals a lot with insomnia. So I'm
Yes.
wondering if that could be as well. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Sleep disturbances, insomnia especially, is huge when it comes to what the screens are doing to our physiology. I also see a lot, like you said, the brain fog, but then with also some of those brain-based symptoms comes things like anxiety and depression. That's a huge one as well. And believe it or not, it even can impair things like our digestive function, because our digestion even relies on the right light cues. The bacteria that live in our gut need those same signals that we do. So they're reliant on basically the signals that we're giving our body, and we're reliant on our light environment, right? And if that's off, the gut bacteria will be off. So you're more likely to see things like bloating, indigestion, constipation, you name it. There's like it really ties to everything, which is why I'm excited to share this with your particular demographic, because it's not about like, okay, stop your job and go live in the forest, but it's like, what are the practical things that you can do? And how can we understand how important the light is to us so that you can still do your work, but maybe prioritize a couple of different things in incorporating light in your life, and also what you can do to mitigate the damage that really truly is coming from the modern screens that we see all the time.
Wow. All right. Let's get into more of the science behind, so what's actually happening when we're looking at our computer screen or our phone screen. How is that affecting our quantum biology?
Sure. Yeah. And so to really get the good picture about how the screens are affecting us, it's important to get a little primer on what happens with light coming from the sun. And this is true regardless of whether it's a sunny day, a cloudy day, a foggy day, a snowy day, a rainy day. So what happens with natural light is that it is never the same blend of colors and the same ratios. It is changing constantly. And so I think all of us have seen light through a prism before and recognize that when light moves through a prism, all of a sudden a rainbow appears. And in science terms, that rainbow stands for different wavelength ranges of light. So the light kind of moves in like a wave, and the longer wavelengths are the red colors. The shorter the wavelength gets, the more you get to the indigo and violet. And just outside of that, the wavelengths that we can see in the rainbow are two other important wavelengths that are also there from natural light, including infrared, or the wavelengths above the red range, and ultraviolet, which are the wavelengths below the violet range. And so, for example, at sunrise, there is no ultraviolet light. And it's really dominated by a more intense red and infrared spectrum coming at us. And so then as the sun goes higher and higher, more colors get layered on in greater and greater intensities until the sun reaches its high point in the sky. And then those colors go away, kind of in a mirror image of how they came. And we have keyed in on these changing colors and changing blends since there's been living creatures, right? Even bacteria key in on the light cycles, their light environment. Amoebas, algae, plants, every living creature keys in on these light signals. And so you can imagine then what happens when we've decided that we can artificially illuminate our environments and we can stare at artificial light sources. Because the artificial bulbs, whether it's the LEDs that you turn on to make your room brighter, or it's the LEDs coming from screen technology, they never mimic the blend of light coming from nature. It's like you get no ultraviolet, zero red and infrared light. It's this spike of blue. There's a little bit of weird, sometimes yellowy green wavelengths. So you can take a fancy little device called a spectrometer and hold it at something to see the rainbow blend. It'll give you a graph. And LEDs and look like so foreign. It's like I said, the spike of blue, a little bit of the yellow, sometimes maybe a green. Fluorescent lights are even worse. So if you happen to be in that sort of an office environment while also doing computer work, it's like a crazy, weird spike of blue and then very little else. And the problem with that is not only is it so not like how we would ever see light or receive the light signals in nature, but it also never changes. It puts us in like the twilight zone, right? It's like the body is like, what time is it? How is it still this same time? And I don't even know what time of day it is actually because of this weird spectrum of light, but I'm going to guess, and it's not changing. And ultimately that confuses a lot of parts of our physiology, because we now know that every single cell in our body has a clock gene associated with it, looking for the time of day to optimize its function. And if we can't give it the time of day, its functionality just goes down drastically, and that can result in a whole host of things.
Wow. So it seems like the light from the sun affects the way we experience time in a way, and the way our biology, because it's constantly communicating with our biology, it sounds like, where when it's daytime, it's like, all right, be fully awake. And then when the sun's going down, it's like, okay, get ready to go to sleep. And that's really amazing. Okay, one really quick story. One of my friends here, he has experienced I guess a total lunar eclipse where the moon went in front of the sun. I think it was only for like 3 minutes. And he said literally everything like went dark. And what was incredible is he said even all of the biology around him would respond. So even the crickets would start, chirping like it was nighttime, and the birds would start making the sounds that they make in the morning. But it was daytime, but just the moon went in front of the sun. So it's just incredible how biology responds immediately to where the sun is.
Yeah.
In the sky, how bright it is.
And you keyed in, that's such a cool story. I've actually never heard anyone like observe that before and like make note of the crickets and the birds and things, but it makes perfect sense, right? Kind of talking about how the light is a cue. But what you said even before that was like, we're relying on light to keep time. And it just so happens that there's us out of those rainbow colors, the color that we cue in on to keep accurate time is blue, that blue wavelength range. And unfortunately, that is the most energy efficient light to put into artificial sources. because remember, I don't know if you remember, right? If you're old enough to remember those incandescent bulbs, which are really rich. They're hot, right? When they light up, they're hot, and they're hot because they're full of infrared light and red light, the warmer wavelengths, but they take a lot of energy to run. And so like we made our lives really energy efficient because we've got a really bright blue that requires very little actual electrical input to illuminate it. However, it's the wavelength range that is the most confusing because it stays the same all day long. Or picture this, right? I wake up before the sunrise maybe, and I look at my phone screen. Whoa, middle of the afternoon. At night, all of a sudden the sun is setting, but I look at my phone screen, middle of the afternoon. So it's easy to see how specifically the LEDs are driving a lot of this disruption that we're experiencing.
Yeah. I actually looked up where to buy those kind of lights that you mentioned, because after I heard you say that in an interview. So we're looking for incandescent light bulbs.
Yeah, try. Sometimes you have to go decorative stores, like there's decorative lighting shops because they're becoming harder and harder to come by.
Yeah. I wanted to talk with you also about mitochondria and the 3 harmful things to mitochondria in our environments. And yeah, let's go.
Well, there's more than just 3. So, but that being said, I think with this, number one, mitochondria are very much dependent on our circadian rhythms, on our light signaling, because they used to be their own bacteria, right? So they used to be their own bacterial species before they even became incorporated into like complex cellular life that we are. And so just like all the other bacteria on the planet want to know the right signaling of light, so do those mitochondria. And they respond by making energy for us. So they know how to adjust energy for us based on the time of day. Do we need more energy because it's morning and Carrie's got to rev things up? Do we need to kind of control energy to different tissues at night because we're going to go into a rejuvenative phase. So maybe I don't need as much cognitive energy. Maybe I don't need as much digestive energy because I'm not eating at 4 o'clock in the morning. And so it's relying on those same light cues that we are. And so when our circadian light is off, that will go awry. But again, the blue wavelength of light, again, the artificial blue actually can destroy the energy production process in mitochondria. Picture the energy production process it's called the electron transport chain. So it's funneling this electrical energy to make this energy currency for our bodies, which is water and ATP. And just so picture someone just jamming up that flow. It's like plugging up an assembly line. You're not going to get the final products being made. And so again, that blue wavelength range of light comes into play again here. And then this is another one that your audience might not be thrilled to hear, but wireless radiation, Bluetooth radiation, it can also destroy that energy flow process through the mitochondria. So can you imagine, right? Like our proximity now to this artificial source of radiation these days and how that can impact our body's ability to make energy at the cellular level. Wherever that energy production process fails is where symptoms can start to show up. So for some people, it is in their brain in the form of cognitive challenges. In other people, it is in their digestive tract or their musculoskeletal system. So they start to feel fatigue, or their immune system where they're going to catch every illness that comes by. And so really that's another one that can impair mitochondria drastically.
Wow. I was going to ask you about the immune systems. Wow. That's crazy. So it also affects the immune system.
Yeah.
Jeez. Wow. So you said Bluetooth radiation. So, I mean, I have to say, ever since they came out with the iPhone, like Bluetooth headphones, I was like, I'm not touching those. Like, that just doesn't make sense. Like, why do you want Bluetooth like right next to your brain?
Yeah. What the sad part about that is like, it's so convenient, right? Like I am like the nerd that my kids say. My kids don't have them either, but I'm like the weirdo who I still have hardwired everything, because it's been known since the 1960s that radiation at that little intensity opens the blood-brain barrier. There's a barrier in the brain for a reason, right? The brain, we don't want to have toxins entering the brain. You don't want these what are called bacterial endotoxins that our body naturally produces. You don't want those entering the brain. That's why we have a barrier there. But that exposure, that Bluetooth exposure opens that barrier and makes your brain more susceptible to toxic damage.
Oh my God.
I know, right? I know. I don't want to be a Debbie Downer with all this stuff, but like, I think it's important to learn it and know, and then you could make wise choices.
Right. Okay, that's mind blowing. Okay, and then so what about Wi-Fi and like EMF? Like,
It's the same thing, right? But like what I find in terms of my client population, remove it from your body, right? Like get the Apple Watch off of your wrist, get the AirPods out of your ears. Try to not have a cell phone just sitting in your pocket all day long. So that's like step one. Step two would be then, if it were me and I was at a computer doing cryptocurrency trading and things like that all day long, I would be hardwired everything, which I am, right? Hardwired mouse, hardwired keyboard, hardwired monitor. So a legit old school desktop that even uses an Ethernet cable to hardwire everything in. If I take my little EMF meter at a station like mine, there is almost zero radiation, zero. As opposed to if I were to take this to a typical desk station these days that has wireless everything, the radiation meter would be off the charts. So a little goes a long way. Like still do your career, still, you know, so you're going to still be on a computer, and we can talk about mitigating the screen to make it not so damaging as well. But all of a sudden you greatly reduce those like basically poisons for the mitochondria.
yeah. I'm like in the process of trying to figure out how to even find someone to set up an Ethernet cable.
I know. So like you can techwellness.com. She's a great resource. August has figured out really how to give people good instructions about, she sells the types of cords and the adapters, because you can hardwire your phone these days, but it requires an adapter that you have to just attach to it. So it can be done, but you're right. It does require just a little bit of digging. And I think the benefit of just that, it's like a month of inconvenience to really figure it out, get the stuff, set it up, and then you're good to go.
Okay. All right. So then, you know, we're dealing with all this, you know, these EMFs and, you know, artificial lights and all this stuff. How do we not fight against it, but how do we, you know, improve our quantum biology? You know, what action steps can we take?
Sure. So I think, you know, something that's really important, and this again, this is a case by case basis, but people who get morning light, and I love it if I can get clients to actually go outside at sunrise, because sunrise is when there's this it's like, that's when our body starts to perceive blue light, right? That was talking about all that blue wavelength that we get from artificial stuff. Well, at sunrise is when that blue starts to hit our eyes and hit our brain and start time. And that kicks off a whole pathway of hormones. You're going to make good amounts of cortisol, which revs us up for the morning. You're going to actually then be able to divvy up the rest of the hormone pathway to testosterone, progesterone, estrogen, like hormones that we need to have elevated and in balance at the right times of the day. And then also, if you can go outside and be outside again another time of the morning, it's when the sun is a little higher in the sky. It's 10 degrees above the horizon, technically. That actually optimizes neurotransmitter levels. So it's going to make your serotonin balanced, your dopamine balanced. It's going to balance thyroid hormones. So if you're dealing with metabolic things, it's going to balance out. It's going to optimize a bunch of pathways in the brain that help with pain, inflammation, libido, cognition, like you name it. There's like, you know, I think morning light, as much as someone can get in their eyes, naked eyes, no sunglasses, right? Naked eyes is by far one of the best habits that you can get into. So that might mean starting your day a little bit later so you can prioritize that morning light, your work day later. It might mean going outside and little intervals. So I've got my teachers that I work with, my factory workers who I work with, who have these little 15-minute breaks, and they head straight outside. They know the benefit of it. So they sync their clock up back to the natural light whenever they can. And the body's not stupid, right? It's not going to go 4 hours and be like, what time is it? Because it got the time at this part of the morning. You got it again a little bit. You're going to get it again towards the afternoon. But you have to just be diligent about consistently syncing back up so that you can maintain that really strong signaling to your cells so that they can optimize their functions.
Yeah, I've been waking up before the sunrise even because there is it looks like red light. I mean, it looks orange, but that's the red light, right?
Yeah, that's the orangey red colors coming through. Yeah.
Yeah. So is that good before the sunrise? And then when
Anytime
the
is
sun,
great. Yeah.
okay.
Do you actually get to see the sun come over the horizon where you are, or not quite?
Pretty much,
That's
very close.
awesome. You don't have to. Like, that's like a big question I get. Like, you don't have to ever see the sun come over the horizon. You just have to be outside, and your eyes will suck in the photons of light they need to create the signaling, to optimize the signaling. But if you can see the sun coming over the horizon or close to it, that's just glorious.
It's pretty cool. Yeah, we just moved into a new place here where we can see the sunrise, so it's so perfect.
Very
I'm
cool.
just really happy about it. So do people need to look at the sky or just be outside or look very closely to the sun, but don't look at the sun, obviously?
Yeah, you don't have to look at the sun. You don't have to look at the sky or near the sun. But you just have to be outside. But if
Okay.
you can't get outside a ton, you do get a bigger bang for your buck if you sky gaze, at least to the brightest part of the sky. Again, not at the sun. You don't even have to be like 10 degrees, 15 degrees from the sun. Just sky gaze up, and you'll notice that it's brighter. And that brightening effect is actually more photonic energy entering your eyes, so you can kind of enhance the signaling.
Yeah, I love how scientifically photons are, let's see, they're a wave and they're also a particle, right?
And a particle, yeah. Yep.
So if you walk outside and light is a wave, it's kind of like being in water, like a water
100%.
of light or something,
You nailed it, Jack. That's exactly what it is. It's like opening your eyes underwater, right? All that water has the potential to get into your eyes. Like, don't do that. But the same thing. You don't have to be in the direct bullet line of these beams of sunlight to get this effect.
Yeah. Okay. I was going to ask, what about a cloudy day? But I mean, it's probably an obvious answer. Just do your best or whatever.
Do your best, but like all the benefits are still there, right? All the benefits still happen even on a cloudy day. So I find that on cloudy days, because it creates a dimmer interior environment for a lot of people, they actually benefit from going outside even more on a cloudy day. Like, it boosts their mood massively because it's brighter outside. And then you get all of the signaling benefits of the light being there.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Because the light still goes through the clouds.
Still goes through the clouds. Yep, exactly. The only time the light will disappear is if it actually goes below the horizon at darkness at nightfall, or like your friend experienced when you have a legit eclipse happening.
Yeah. I have an interesting question. I wonder, you may not have been asked this before. What about looking into a fire?
Fire is so soothing. Fire contains next to no blue light. So that's why that's what we were designed to view at night. And it doesn't cause a delay in our desire to go to sleep. It doesn't drive insomnia, because campfire is so rich in the same wavelengths of light around that we would be experiencing around sunset. And so it's just kind of a continuation of sunset. That's a soothing wavelength. And it's really rich in the red and the infrared, which is very, very healing and soothing for our bodies.
Wow. So there's basically health benefits of like having like a little fire.
Massive. Yeah, massive.
Wow. Okay. Vitamin D. I've heard these strange things about vitamin D. Like, if you go out in the sun for a day and then you take a shower, then you wash off all the vitamin D, so then you lose all the vitamin D. Is that true, or?
No, it's not, because it does get synthesized in our skin so there's a lot of cholesterol in our skin. And it's true that the wavelength of light called ultraviolet B or UVB doesn't penetrate any deeper than the superficial layers of the skin. So those wavelengths of light strike the cholesterol in our skin here, and that creates vitamin D, the one form of vitamin D. But the vitamin D just doesn't stay in the skin. It actually you create not just that one form of vitamin D, you actually create dozens of metabolites or variations of that vitamin D. So we think of vitamin D like we can supplement it. It's like taking one version of vitamin D versus getting dozens of different biologically active versions when the sunlight strikes your skin, and then it gets transported in the bloodstream and goes wherever it needs to go to have its activity. So no, it's that there's no worry about, like, yeah, maybe if you were outside you're like, I'm going to get my 20-minute sun session and then I'm going to go right inside. I'm going to soap up and scrub all the oils off my body. That might impair it, but no, like you make it within an hour, it's circulating all throughout your body.
Yeah. And does it come through the eyes as well, through the light that comes in?
No, just the skin. That's the one wavelength that you have to have strike your skin in order to have the effects we're talking about. The rest of them happen just by being in the ambient light and not having to be in the direct wavelength range of sunlight.
Okay. So what about cellular health tips? I've heard you mention before, like high intensity
Interval
workouts.
training, if you can, like, I see a variety of clients. So some of my clients are just way too sick from their chronic illness experience and their journey of healing to even think about a high intensity interval workout. But then I've got clients who've reached the point where they're like, oh yeah, I feel like I could elevate my heart rate in these bursts. So high intensity interval training is simply like a short burst where you kick your heart rate up significantly higher, and then you allow it to recover. And then you kick it up and allow it to recover. And it can be done in as short of a time window as 4 minutes. It can be 30 minutes, right? A 30-minute wave chunk of time. But what it does is it signals to our body to make new mitochondria. So if we have some broken mitochondria, if they're a little dysfunctional, if our body is like needs more mitochondria because we have a lot of energy demands that are not being met, then we can make new mitochondria that can fulfill those roles and make more energy for us. And so mitochondria, the signal to make new mitochondria, it's called mitochondrial biogenesis. High intensity interval training can be a really great way to stimulate that. And it happens that night when you're sleeping. So it doesn't happen in real time, but as soon as you fall asleep that night, your body's like, whatever the hell Carrie did was super challenging. Let's get a bit better energy capacity in case she tries to do that again, so that we don't have to reach that period of fatigue like we did with that workout.
Wow. And then that also like boosts the metabolism and
exactly
things like that.
Yeah, it makes you a
So,
better fat burner at rest, right? So people, the mitochondria will burn fat for us. They transform fat into electrons to make energy. And so if you got more of those factories, healthier factories inside of your cells, at rest, the body's job is to pull fat from storage and burn it for fuel.
yeah. So high intensity things people can do is like burpees, and I think you said like high knees or sprinting,
Yeah.
or high jumps, things like that.
Anything that gets you, so like let's give your listeners an equation. So theoretically, the theoretical maximum that your heart could beat, my heart could beat, is 220 beats per minute. To reach the threshold of getting high enough intensity, you have to get to about 85% of your heart rate max, which is age adjusted. So let's say 80 to 85%. Let's go 80 to make it easy. So let's say someone's a 20-year-old right now, because it's easy math for me. Let's say someone is 20. You have to subtract your age from 220. So 220 minus your age as a 20-year-old, 220 minus 20 gives you 200. Multiply that by 0.8, gives you 160 beats per minute. You have to do these spikes where you get your heart rate up to 160 beats per minute and then recover and spike, recover. You do that 5, 6, 7 times, and it's the signal your body needs to start to make new mitochondria when you sleep.
Okay.
Does that make
And
sense?
you can measure your heart rate by just feeling your heart and then putting a timer on, or?
I legit just I put my 2 fingers underneath my neck right here. So like my jaw and my neck, there's that soft tissue, and you'll feel your pulse there. And so then all I do is I have my watch and I do a 6-second. So I'll set it for a 6-second timer, and I'll count my pulse and I'll multiply by 10, right? To get how many times my heart would beat in 60 seconds.
Okay. Just out of curiosity, what kind of high intensity do you do? Like sprinting or?
Hill sprints are my favorite.
Oh,
and like hill, right? Like it's about a 30-second hill. There's a couple in town, right, that are close enough by. It's like a 30-second all out sprint up, and about a 90-second to 2-minute recovery as I kind of like meander my way down. And I'll just do that 4, 6, 8 times in a workout and call it good.
nice.
Yeah.
How many times a week? Like,
oh gosh, no, times a week. Once a week, once every other week. Your mitochondria live a long enough time. They live for 2 weeks before they start to kind of decide that whether or not they want to die off. So you don't have to do this ever. Like the mitochondria I made 2 weeks ago are still with me. So if I do this same type of intense workout now tomorrow, they'll be like, oh yeah, we're still needed. Carrie still needs us. And in fact, we might need to make more of us to help support this again.
Okay, so wow, that's good. That's a relief. I don't have to do it every single day. Just like,
No. Yeah. And like overtraining really is a thing. Less is more when you kind of know how to time it. So do a hard workout like that every 10 days or so. You're good.
oh, nice. Cool. And then I'm sure that improves like heart health and
Yeah,
like
it
that.
turns on longevity genes. It improves heart health. It can be beneficial for sleep, even for some people. There's a lot of benefits you can get from that.
Yeah. One thing I deal with is like really tight hamstrings. So it could probably, all of this would help with that, right?
Yeah, here's the deal. Guess what mitochondria also make? They make water, and water is hydrating for our tissues. And so part of tissue stiffness, including muscular stiffness, is just a lack of water in that area. So as you start to do these things, you'll start to hydrate your tissues better. You'll get more flexible. And then obviously you might be able to do certain moves better. So let's say your squat looks better, or your lunges look better, or your sprinting feels better. And then, then that's going to improve mitochondrial health, because you're going to do that again. And then the mitochondria, you'll make more mitochondria to make more water for you. And it's just kind of like this feed forward effect that happens.
Nice. Okay. My wife, oh no, this is a big question here actually. So eyesight. So I've noticed probably due to all the screen time, my left eye has gone down in, eyesight.
Sure.
So does light therapy help with that? Just looking at just being outside?
Yeah. I've had a lot of people, it's twofold, right? Twofold. Yes, you need the vision starts to get destroyed. The myopia starts to happen from excessive blue light, because the eye is trying to prevent the excessive blue light from stimulating the receptors over and over again. So it lengthens it, and that changes how light bends in the eye. And so if you can minimize your exposure to the blue light by doing things like having screen protections, and we can talk about that, blue blocking glasses, those sorts of things. So you're stopping the input, the toxic input, if you will, and you go outside. Red is the antidote. Red is soothing. Red wavelengths of light really heal the eye tissue, and distance gazing to help retrain those muscles of the eye as well, because we're seeing up close like this all the time, and we're not using the muscles required to focus far anymore. So that's what I tell people when they're sky gazing: pick something, a tree, a bird, a cloud, just gaze and as far away as you can, and try to bring it into clarity and try to make that image sharper. And over time, I've heard of so many people changing their eyesight with this.
Beautiful. Because the eyes are malleable, right? Like it's
so malleable, and they're such a dense, they're one of the densest areas of the body for mitochondria. So as we're improving like mitochondrial health, we can improve how the eye can heal, because they have the energetic capacity to then say, okay, yeah, here's enough energy, we can heal this tissue now. So
wow, beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay. And then my wife deals with migraines. Did all of this help with that?
Yeah, absolutely. Now migraines can have a hormonal trigger, but it's typically triggered sometimes by hormone imbalances, and those imbalances can get balanced with natural light. One of the courses that I teach is called Quantum Fertility, and it's really for optimizing fertility, which deals with optimizing hormones. And you'll see then when people put into place what we call this circadian biology, these circadian rhythms, that not only will they start to ovulate normally and be able to get pregnant, but then things like PMS go away, migraines go away, cramping goes away. So you do have hormonal benefits by that hormones become balanced by doing this. And then the other portion of that is that oftentimes the blue light wavelength range is very neurotoxic to the brain. It's excitatory. It excites the brain. And that's what migraines really are. It's like this excessive excitation in the brain, and you get the change in blood flow, get a lot of things, get a lot of downstream things that happen. But your wife might be someone who benefits from getting the orange toned blue blockers and putting them on diligently at sunset, and just blocking that wavelength range from entering her eyes. And also if she uses a screen a lot, using something like Iris Tech software on her screen in either health mode or biohacker mode, if she can tolerate it, to really minimize the amount of blue light that's coming from the screen.
Iris Tech software?
Yeah. It's a software download for your screen, and you can just set the different modes. And like I said, the 2 modes that to help eliminate blue light. Health mode's okay. It's good for the day, but if someone is staring at their screen at night after the sun has set, they really also have to get used to switching it to biohacker mode, which is going to look weird as heck at first for you if you're not used to this, because it's going to turn your screen red. But that red wavelength range would be what you would be seeing in Campfire. So you have to kind of imitate that and then make that connection. You can't have that blue light entering your eyes after sunset.
And can you get that app for your phone too?
You can get that app for your phone too. Yep.
Whoa, game changing. Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. Does diet matter?
Do you know, diet's the last thing I talk about. I don't know if you've ever heard me say that in a podcast, but here's why. Yes, diet matters, right? You can't eat garbage food and expect necessarily optimum human performance. But humans are like hardwired to eat rewarding foods. Because picture it, like if I had come, if in nature I came upon, let's say, a beehive that had fallen and all the bees had scattered, I would eat all that honey, right? I wouldn't stop, because that would be a really easy source of energy for me just to take in. Same thing with when there's a hunt or something, that people eat until they're it's a feasting mentality, because they know that there'd be periods of famine. And so I try to, because of that ingrained eating behavior in people, I try to touch food last. So I would rather people optimize when they eat. Okay. So let's eat between sunrise and sunset, because that's when we're optimized to digest our food. Then we're not optimized to eat every couple of hours, snacking all day long. We're meant to have within that window of time 2 to 3 meals, right? 2 to 3 meals that are solid meals. And then lastly, I tell people, the majority of people, their body cannot tolerate carbohydrates at breakfast. So I switch their breakfast over to a protein-rich, low-carb breakfast, and then have them do whatever they want for the other 2 meals. I make sure they chew their food 30 times, because that's a huge one. You know, if we're eating when we're in front of the computer, or like when we're on the go, it's like you chew it 5 times and you're not setting the stage to digest your food well. I optimize all those things before I even touch food, because I think those things really can be a big bang for the buck. And it's not as a lot of people don't want to change what they eat. So I'd rather optimize everything else first.
Yeah. How important is it to eat a lot of protein after a workout?
It depends on the type of workout, right? Like if you were doing a workout where you're breaking down muscle mass and expecting to rebuild it up that night when you slept, you have to have the building blocks to be able to do that. So it's like burning down your house and then just thinking it's going to build itself back up, but without the supplies. You actually need the supplies. So protein after a workout is a really good way to stimulate those anabolic building pathways. And so you got about a 30-minute window to elevate your protein consumption in order to kind of get that process rolling.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Can you talk about easy water?
Oh boy. Yes, I can. I mean, this is like, it's like one of my favorite topics for sure, Jack, right? But like easy water is, it's a concept that I think it takes people a little while to wrap their brain around, because that easy water is the term for the water that's actually inside of our bodies. And I'm certain most of your listeners have heard the human body is 60% water. But it's not like liquid water in a glass. Liquid water in a glass, if I were to kind of like blow it up under a molecular microscope to see how the molecules, the H2O molecules, are interacting with each other, it would look like this H2O molecule is going to bounce here, and now it's going to bounce over here and be over here, and now it's going back here. It's very randomly ordered. But the water in our bodies, the H's and the O's form hexagons. They form a very ordered and organized pattern. And that type of a patterning is such that when you actually do what we would call some chemistry math here, which doesn't have a charge to it, because liquid water is typically neutral. It is neutral. It doesn't have a positive or a negative charge. That water in its hexagonal arrangement, called EZ or exclusion zone water, it's negatively charged. And to form that negative charge, it kicks out a proton, and that proton lines up right next to that that negatively charged EZ. So everywhere in your body, you have a biological surface. You have this EZ water that's negatively charged, and then this proton wire that's right next to it. And that creates a battery of potential energy, to the extent that the researcher who discovered this, Dr. Pollack, was able to put a little tiny electrode in the proton zone, a little tiny electrode in the exclusion zone that's negatively charged, and he could light a light bulb. It's why we look at any battery, right, that has a positive end and a negative end. And you have to have what's called charge separation for electricity to flow. And we have that all throughout our bodies. It's really rewriting the paradigm. And that's what quantum biology is doing. It's rewriting the paradigm that we were taught for forever and how the body operates, as opposed to thinking about chemistry of the body. We're looking at the flow of electricity. We're looking at the flow of protons and how that actually animates life. And the research and clinical application of these things has just been astounding for me. I started off in a much more traditional background, a much more biochemical traditional paradigm. And I, within the past 10 years have really dove deep into this quantum paradigm. And it is mind blowing how beneficial the things we talk about, like photons, that's a quantum particle. Like we talk about photons, optimizing exclusion zone water. So basically electrons and protons. Doing these things has been a game changer for people.
Wow. So then, I mean, yeah, that just kind of changes everything, because so then that means we're like a walking, like,
water battery
thing of energy.
Yeah.
Battery, yeah.
Yeah, we're a walking battery made out of water, basically. And it's just so cool to think about. And so then there's things, here's where your people like this too, right, Jack? Because there's things that battery actually does provide a legitimate source of energy for the body. And so there's things that deplete that battery, and there's things that expand that battery. And so what depletes it? Wireless radiation, right? Hence why I want people to take the wireless and Bluetooth devices, Bluetooth and wireless radiation, take them off of your physical body and hardwire your workstation. Because if you're sitting in this radiation, this non-native electromagnetic radiation soup around you, you're draining your water battery. And what builds it up is the infrared wavelength range of light that comes from the sun. We have almost zero infrared light in our environment anymore because modern window glass blocks it, and light bulbs don't have it anymore, right? They got rid of it to be energy efficient. But sunlight is always approximately 50% infrared light coming to us. So we can go out at any time and soak up that infrared. And what Dr. Pollack's lab showed was that when we expose this EZ water region to a source of infrared, it expands it fourfold. It's legitimately charging a battery the same way you could see your cell phone battery increasing in charge if you plug it into the charger. We can do the same thing by just putting our body in natural light.
Wow. Okay. For some reason, what's coming to mind is like, because some people can go without eating food for, I mean, I've heard some crazy, like 60 days or something.
Oh, I've seen there's breatharians who have been documented for 40 years, legit documented.
Wait, what?
I know. Listen, I thought that this was weird as heck until I started to actually interact. Like I talked to these people because I wanted to learn more. And one of them was studied in a hospital setting. He hadn't had any water or any food for decades. And they studied him for 10 days under in a hospital laboratory scenario. And they were like, he doesn't need it. But he lived a life in nature. He was always connected to the surface of the earth, which is actually electron flow. There's electrons from the surface of the earth. He was always under the natural spectrum of light. So he was charging that water battery. He was doing nothing with modern living to create the dysfunctions that we create these days. So he was completely able to survive without ever eating or drinking a dang thing. And he was a very healthy human being.
Oh my God. Wait, where can I find out about this guy?
Look up breatharians, and he will probably be the first person that pops up.
What? So we can just live off of the energy.
We just kind of been taught that the only way we get energy is from food. And in a modern life, like even if living a modern lifestyle like I still do, I would say I only derive a third of my energy from food. I get the rest of it from all these other things which we're talking about.
Whoa. Okay. Um, and then grounding, there's also a lot of scientific evidence, like putting your bare feet on the grass, right?
Yeah, yeah. And
Exactly.
putting your bare feet or any bare skin on the earth. And this one's an interesting one because there is a really good documentary that I encourage people to watch if they want to kind of maybe understand more about this, or flip one of their significant others or a friend to like be like, wait a second. And it's the earthing documentary, and it's put on by two prominent earthing researchers, James Oshman, who's a biophysicist, and Clint Ober, who was an electrical engineer until he realized that the earth is actually our main source of electricity. And he was like, wait, why am I grounding all my electrical wires into the earth? Oh, it's because the earth is actually its own source of electricity. And so he kind of went down this amazing earthing grounding rabbit hole and hasn't come back. Like, he's still so passionate about it. But the earth's surface is basically leaking electrons. Lightning discharges happening all the time, thousands of them anywhere on the planet at any given moment. There's lightning discharges. That's electricity getting discharged back to the surface of the earth, right? And that's creating this electron repository. And as soon as we touch our bare skin to it, we are actually able to pull it in like a wire. We can pull the electrons into our bodies. And where do those electrons go? They go to around our red blood cells to help improve our blood flow. They go to sources of inflammation, chronic inflammation, like inflamed joints, arthritic joints, and they can calm inflammation. They can actually go and support our circadian rhythm. There's lots of research to say that the more that people are grounded, the better they're going to have that cortisol surge at the natural time in the morning and the melatonin surge at the natural time at night. So you can get so many benefits from simply touching bare skin to the earth.
Wow. If there's a towel, if you lay on a towel, that doesn't work.
No, it doesn't work. Now, there are fibers that can be woven. So you have earthing socks, for example, that have like a copper thread to them. So yeah, you can get a blanket that has a copper thread through it because copper is conductive, and then sit on that if you wanted to.
Okay. Wow, interesting. I've heard you also talk about water and say some pretty mind-blowing things.
Some call them mind-blowing, some call them weird, but I appreciate that. Thank you.
That water potentially has memory. What else did you say? And it has emotions too, or something?
It responds to it can respond to emotions. It's an antenna. It's a frequency antenna. It's basically the ultimate quantum supercomputer. There are legitimate military, there's military around the world, organizations around the world that have supercomputers, quantum supercomputers that are based in water because of all of the data storage capacity that water has.
What?
I know. And so here's the thing that you have to know, right? Water, when it takes on that arrangement that we talked about inside of our body, those hexagons, anytime water organizes itself in patterns like that, it takes on what's called a liquid crystalline state. It becomes a liquid crystal. And so the water inside of us is a liquid crystal, but water in a glass can also take on geometrical arrangements. It's called microclusters, and it becomes then its own liquid crystal. And liquid crystals, liquid crystal technology has been around for forever. And it's how we get some of our displays, our LCD displays. So liquid crystals have been studied by just traditional physicists for a very long time. And they have been found to be able to interact and store and act as an antenna, basically, for every electromagnetic frequency and also subtle energy frequency that they've ever tested. Which means that the water in our bodies is continually sampling all of the waves of energy and information around us, which there's plenty of it, right? There's tons of it, and using it and storing it and holding it to help our bodies adapt in real time. Water in a glass can do the same thing. And there's research done by Masaru Emoto, by Veda Austin, by Vladimir Voykov. There's tons of Rustum Roy. There's a lot of researchers who are recognizing that water in itself can store energy and information, and then it can actually be visualized on a more macroscopic viewpoint as having understood what energy and information was imprinted into it.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Um,
Is that too much?
so that would back up if we're, so energy and information. So then if we're like feeding good, because we're made mostly of water, it sounds like.
Well, yeah, here's the stat to be more mind-blowing. If I were to line up all of the molecules in your body, not as a percentage, but by molecular count, 99 out of every 100 of them would be water. So we're basically just water, right? We're full of water. We are just these water beings that have structured it into a liquid crystalline state. So if that tells you how interactive our bodies are with the frequency information in our environment, it's because 99% of our molecules are water.
Whoa. So if we feed our water positive information, positive thoughts, positive beliefs, and I believe we can even communicate with ourselves, with our body, like, telling
Exactly.
ourselves to heal or whatever we want. And perhaps us being water even can help us manifest what we want to manifest as well.
100%, Jack. You're speaking my language. So here's what's interesting, right? I before I knew any of this stuff, I read a book probably at least 10 years ago called Radical Remissions. And it was a woman who she worked at a cancer clinic as a social worker. And every once in a while, someone with a stage 4 cancer who was basically sent home to die, say, there's nothing more we can do for you, would come back into the clinic and she'd be like, you're still alive. Like, what did you do? And she would just kind of listen to their story, their healing story, what they did. And so then she went around the world and she found over 1,000 cases of what she called radical remission, these stage 4 cancers that all of a sudden these people are thriving. And she was like, okay, what did you do to change your diet? What about exercise? What about blah, 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 blah. The number one thing they all had was this insane level of hope that their body could heal itself. And that right there was like, what's the mechanism of action for that? How is hope that powerful? Well, I now know that it's influencing the water in our body. And if that water is around every DNA strand in my body, if it's around every protein in my body, we now know that it's the water that changes the shape of proteins, not the protein itself. It's the water that can cause the protein to go from a dysfunctional shape back to functional. It's the water that will unwind the DNA to express certain genes, to allow the body to have that what's called a certain gene expression. It's not the actual the 1% of the molecules that we actually have studied over the course of 100 years, 200 years of science. It's the water that does it all. So when you this is where that quantum biology paradigm is kind of like trying to break through to be like, guys, we've studied the wrong thing. Like, we are not looking at how the body truly operates. And water is a prime example.
Oh my God. That makes sense. I don't know if you read The Biology of Belief.
Bruce Lipton, 100%. It's exactly the work of Bruce Lipton as well.
Wow, yeah. And we just listened to an interview, I forgot her name, but a woman who healed cancer twice just by communicating with her cells, basically, and saying, like, believing that she's going to heal like 100%. And
exactly. Yep.
Wow. Okay. Well, I think we've covered enough to change the entire human species. So,
well, I'm just appreciative of this conversation, Jack. And I really hope that people listening just have this open mind to be like, wait a second, this might be a little out there, but like, whoa, the possibilities are astonishing.
Yeah. Wow. So to review, so we're made of water. We're also made of light too, right?
We have tons of light. Every single one of our cells makes and emits its own light as well. Yeah.
We're a walking battery, water battery.
We're a water battery. We rely on light signaling, right? So we got to go outside. We need to tell time. We do that with natural light. Yeah, all that. And then just make note, like, for people who are dealing in crypto, it is, what is your light environment, right? So change your screens to red if you can. Get some blue blockers. I have like yellow tone ones for day, orange tone for night, right after sunset, before sunrise, if you're up and at 'em before sunrise. Just a couple of little things you can do to really help support your body. And then recognize that, we're just powerful beyond all belief that we've ever been taught. And I hope that this just inspires some people to kind of dig into that a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. What brand of blue blockers do you recommend?
These are Viva Rays. They're so convenient because you have the daytimes. These are called their 3-in-1s. Here's their daytime. Here is their evening lens. And if someone has a hard time going to sleep, like true insomnia, 30 minutes to 60 minutes before your desired bedtime, you put the red ones on and you're just out like a light and you sleep soundly all night long.
Okay, Viva Race. Beautiful. And where can people learn more?
Jack, my main hub of interacting with people is Instagram. So Carrie B Wellness on Instagram. I try to post about this stuff every single day just to inspire more people to kind of learn about this and apply it in their lives. And then, if they want to take a course from me or become part of my private community where we have live Q&As every week and stuff like that, then go to carriebwellness.com and they can see all of the different offerings that I have there as well.
All right, beautiful. Thanks so much, Carrie.
Thanks, Jack. This was fun.